How's it going, everybody? We just got back from RLCS, and of course, only 2-3 days away from it, and we've already got a bunch of crazy roster news. But this story actually starts the first day I arrived on August 8th. I got off the plane in Fort Worth, Texas, and immediately people were like, yo, you talking about... I got tagged in so many different like tweets about like, yo, are you covering this? Are you talking about this? What's going on? What are all the details? So rather than jumping the gun and trying to get the first thing on it, I took a step back. I wanted to see how this one developed. I wanted to figure all the details before we tackle this one, because this one is pretty spicy, and it may not be as aggressive as you may think. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about a organization that is hosting an APAC South team by the name of Meta Power. You may have actually seen them in our chat, and I'm going to put this out there at the beginning. There is a lot of different positions. There's a lot of different people, a lot of different titles that go around, and not everybody knows exactly what's going on in their own company. Sometimes there's people that are completely oblivious to what's going on from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to put this out for clarification. There is a lot of people that are fantastic and are working really hard and are great people within Meta Power. And this is not a representation of everybody at the company currently, previously, or that are candidly trying to leave as quickly as possible. So if you guys don't know about the Meta Power situation, this is a team that acquired a team by the name of Slot Machine. This is Balleries, Poofy, and Kevin. Tank was a substitute, and so was Trill, who is the coach. So there's a lot of different aspects, but you've got a roster of 5, 3 starters, 1 coach. This primarily is going to focus in on Trill. Trill decided to put out a tweet longer with the spicy title, The Deceptions of Meta Power and Why We Left. And everybody's like, what? Hold up, what's going on here? So we pull up the tweet longer, and there's actually some interesting things about this. Trill decides to make a public statement in regards to the way that Meta Power is operating behind the scenes. He talks about his position, what he does, that I'm a coach, and all this kind of stuff. I joined the boys for the spring split. I originally got in contact with the CEO. His name is Jeff. We're going to refer to him as Lunchbox. That's his gamer name or his alias. I was like introduced to a lot of non-gamer like business people this past week. And for them to be like, well, what's your name? And I'm like, well, Adam, but everybody calls me Lawler. And they're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, it's my gamer alias. And they're like, why do you have an alias? And I'm like, when you sign up to play a video game, you have to have like a username. And you don't just put your first name and your last name. You have like a gamer name that everybody calls you by. And then you become popular with that gamer name. And that's just your name now. So Jeff, Lunchbox, same person. So they got into contact with him like way back, even before the winter major, and they discussed joining their org back when they were like middle of the pack gaming. Meta Power was a rebrand, if for those that don't know, of middle of the pack gaming, if I'm correct, based upon the way that I've read these things. So he got invited to go stay with Jeff at an Airbnb in LA, and they discussed the future of the org, what the plans were, how they wanted to like come to fruition, and what their like goals were, which again, I think is a really important conversation. You show your seriousness, you invite people out, you have a business conversation, you stay it and go, hey, what are your goals? What are your intentions? These are ours. Let's see how we can make ends meet. Let's come together on this and try to come to a common consensus. So all that stuff goes down, and that time passes. They decide to rebrand as Meta Power. And while he was apparently Trill, the coach, was part of like the process of designing the new logo and choosing an editor for the announcement video, as well as helping him choose a new org name, staying within the acronym of MPG. Why they wanted to stay with MPG for middle of pack gaming and didn't want to change to something else. Like if you're doing a rebrand, just do a rebrand, man. It doesn't matter. Time passed, though. I felt as if this org would be extremely supportive of the team and would be the best org to help our team grow, which makes sense, right? If I'm Trill, I'm trying to break into the scene in any capacity as a coach, as a sub player, whatever. And you're like, hey, I'm going to fly you to LA. I'm going to sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation with you about your focus and the things that you're trying to accomplish and everything that you're trying to do. And you have this conversation and you have this moment and you're like, you know what? Based upon the things that you're doing, I think candidly, like I'm feeling pretty good about this. So that ends up happening, and he then decides, all right, he's also hiring me to make the logo. He's hiring me to do, like, I'm being provided work and we're keeping this line of communication. I'm feeling pretty good about it. So that happens. At the same time, I look at that and go, why is this org owner who is trying to hire you as a coach also asking you to do an announcement video, as well as the design for the team name and all these types of things? Like, to me, that is someone you hire a third party to do, not the guy who's coaching your team. Now, maybe if, you know, Trill also has different skill sets, it's best of both worlds, and maybe Lunchbox is like, yeah, this is awesome. Not only do you have an impact of this, but if I'm an organization and I still don't have a logo, I still don't have the ability to make announcements, I don't have the design stuff in place, I, as a person in this industry, go, that's a red flag, personally. Like, if I'm getting picked up by an organization, I want it to be an organization that's got their stuff together, not one that is trying to find a new logo and do all this rebranding. Rebranding should be separate of what my task is, personally. That's just my take on it. Ethan talks about how it doesn't feel good that he had a friendship business agreement. It was never meant to be deceptive, but the team and the core issue with this is that they have not been paid the amount contracted to them. So apparently they did sign a contract. They were with the roster. And the issue that it stems from is that they have not been compensated for their results, which, again, this is an educational purpose. And I quote you, in your contract, if you are signing a legally binding document, a couple things you should do. Number one, get a lawyer. Number two, read the fine print. Number three, look for exit clauses. If you do not compensate me within X amount of time written on that contract, I am no longer required to represent or do anything. If it's a net 30, net 60, whatever it is, if you don't pay me in that time, our contract is null and void. I want nothing to do with you. You pay me on time, and if you don't, all these legal obligations do not matter because you are not holding up your end of the bargain. Simple as that. Clean slate. I'm out. Deuces. Like, I'm done. Chat, I'm going to hire you to work a 9 to 5 at a retail job, and then you don't get paid for 2 weeks. What do? You keep going to work? No, you leave, and you don't do it respectfully. You don't give them a 2 weeks notice. They have ruined all formalities. You're gone. Same thing. That's just the way it works. And for some reason, and this is the scary thing about these types of circumstances, is that when you are striving to try to make a career out of esports, when you're working really hard and you get a glimmer of hope, you get an opportunity, it's very tough to remove yourself from that opportunity and look at it objectively. It happens all the time. It happens all the time in esports, where these people that are busting their butts and are getting a chance to break into the space, and then this first organization comes in and like teases them and goes, hey, here's money, here's opportunity, here's this thing, when in reality the organization is run like shit. Bad words. Not saying that's the case here, but it is, and it happens so many times. I'm talking more of a generalization rather than this specific circumstance. So again, take the right legal precautions, make sure you read the fine print, ask for advice. There's people in this community that will help you with this. I'm doing this video to help educate everybody on a broad spectrum. Do not come to me for advice anymore. I used to help people all the time. I got burned for it. Never doing it again. Not my place. I don't have the capacity to do it anymore. It drives me crazy. I am just educating in a grand spectrum and a generalization for anybody who does stumble upon this. Very basic things that you should be doing. So, not getting paid. Let's find out more details. So, they try to make efforts for clarification. Obviously, if there's this friendship and this relationship, hey, like, what's going on, man? Let me not just jump the gun right away. Let me ask what's going on. Let's give you some time. Let's try to figure out what the bottom of this is. Handle it privately. Awesome. Great approach by Trill. So every time he got asked him why they weren't paid, same excuses. Bank account was frozen because his business was filed in the wrong middle name, which was a typo by one letter. Not only is it a horrible, blatant lie, but it is something that, when confronted about it, he's provided evidence that proved this to be a lie, even more blatantly false. For me as a person, I can understand hardships happening in life. However, he has not once been transparent to the team or myself, whether these lies stem from the lack of preparation towards funding, or these are complete fabrications in order to gain exposure. Monetization for his org through us isn't known to me. While I'm a forgiving person, and luckily my team are some of the nicest people I've ever been completely understanding of this lie, this has gone on too long, which is why he is now making it public. So he has discussed and stated, hey, what's going on, has met with excuse after excuse with excuse, which is where all these conversations are going, to which he is now deciding to go public because that is the thing to do nowadays. Rather than hiring a lawyer or somebody to be like, hey, we got to take you to small claims court, depending on all that kind of stuff. You got to find a way. Usually, in most circumstances, the lawyer fees and everything else aren't worth the compensation, which is why you work into those lawyer fees that said party that is in trouble pays for those fees. It's just a matter of if you want to take that initial investment to make it happen. So, something to consider. But most small claims court things you can do is if you're hiring a lawyer over like 60 days of pay or whatever, and they need to compensate you your hundreds of dollars instead of thousands or tens of thousands, the lawyer fees you can also make that company pay as well. Like, they'll usually side on your behalf. Not always the case. You never know. The legal system is kind of weird in the United States. So that all goes happen, and there's a lot of things that he links and showcases in his original tweet. The first one is a conversation and a DM from them on Discord, and it talks about how, hey, you're not compensating us, but how are you, if you're not able to pay your own players, able to buy jerseys for other people? To which he says, hey, we have an allowance for with our sponsor. We have a sponsor that signed to us, and that money allocation is towards this circumstance, which is a publicity thing. Hey, we're going to buy these people who want to give away a thing, which is kind of weird if you're not paying your players, but you're also compensating them. I also do understand from a devil's advocate spot that sponsors, when you bring in that money, you pre-allocate as a organization. This money is going to each part. This part goes towards like giveaways and like compensation and marketing. This part goes towards salaries. This part goes to like you before like anything happens, you pre-allocate and like segment those things. It makes sense. So on both sides, it could be that the money that from this sponsor is being allocated towards that. But if you're not paying your players, you should scrap this, in my opinion. We haven't done the post for the roster because the graphic isn't set. Looks like you guys are trying to leave. Looks like you think you aren't getting paid and are out. Addendums were sent out. That was on the 5th. So that was 3 days before this post was made. Again, this doesn't have all the details, which is unfortunate. It doesn't talk about like when they were supposed to get paid. The big information that I'm missing from this is when were they supposed to be compensated and for how much? If they have been under this team, so they signed with MetaPower, according to Wikipedia, the official sign where they came into was back in April. So you're talking late April, May, June, July, beginning of August. So you're talking roughly 4.5 months. And I'm curious if they have not been compensated for all of that time, all 4.5 months, or if there has been partial compensation, or if there's, I don't know. I don't know the specifics of that. I don't know if it actually matters. But if you have not been paid since, like if you were in April, it's now May, 30-day net, we'll even give them a little bit more leniency, 60 days net pay. So say it's been 2 months for work and you still haven't been compensated, you're now doubling that. Yeah, I'm pretty frustrated if I see a giveaway. I'm very frustrated if I see a giveaway on that. So that is a type of circumstance. Maybe there's some things that are going on, and don't worry, there's more to this. So all that stuff goes on. He talks about his frustrations, about being supportive, and like how we're trying to give you this time, and how you guys are going and picking up another roster, even though you're not compensating. Like there's certain things that like I can understand where Trill is coming from that looks super, super sketchy. You're supposed to be compensating us. You're not. You are buying jerseys for giveaways for marketing purposes. You're picking up another roster. Why are you picking up another roster but not paying us? You should settle the debts here in good faith before you go and make other plays, because clearly it looks like the staff and the support system in line is not doing well. So there's some conversations about that and talks about more specific details that kind of are just getting kind of nitpicky. But Lunchbox's response to all this is, and I quote, "So because they don't know what happened, they want to about it," which does not look good. As a owner and as someone who is trying to quell the issues that you're having internally with your like own team that is worried about pay and compensation, if he lists all these things and talks about his frustrations, your job is to be the bigger person. And I hate that I'm having to like teach this to adults, but bite your tongue and say, hey, apologies. I understand your frustration. We're trying to make it okay. These are the issues that are happening. These are all the things. And by not doing that makes you look pretty guilty. It's not fun to be that person or to deal with that stuff by all means, but if you messed up, you got to own it and you got to make it better. So there's a lot of things that then go back and forth in their conversations. Hey, whether we come back to MetaPower or not, I think we'll definitely get something positive out of the experience. We all just got our jerseys because this screwed up royally. We didn't grab this team. They came to us. They also don't have contracts yet. It doesn't fit the budget. We're doing this and that. And it's like, there's just so many things of miscommunication. And like, at this point, there is definitely some bias from Trill's perspective, it looks like, where he is obviously emotionally invested. He feels like he's been burnt. No matter what is said, like both sides are being defensive and like there's nothing beneficial that's going to come out of it, which happens all the time. So this happens and Trill basically summarizes and says, hey, once everybody gets their money, they lose most of the worries they had. Kevin, one of the players, was saying he couldn't even play Rocket League because his cord is broke and he has no money, so he had to wait until his dad went back to Belgium to get his monitor and cord. And there wasn't much I could do about it because I feel at fault for bringing them on and having this happen. So Trill is feeling the blame because they're not being compensated. It was his decision to be like, yep, let's go with MetaPower. They're not being compensated. It's coming back. Lunchbox then says, no one could have foreseen this. Could anyone have predicted a company like Sector 6 that has version 1 and G2 in their sister company would send out our jerseys without passing quality control because the players hadn't got their jerseys yet? Could anyone predict my legal Zoom attorney typing in Taylor instead of Tyler for my documents? It was a few unforeseen things that couldn't be predicted or anything done about it. I understand this, and it's why I'm giving org portion of tournament winnings back. So apparently part of their contracts was if they won and it got compensation, that the org would get a percentage of that. Not all contracts are the same. Some orgs do, some orgs don't. Usually lower tier orgs, that is their way of making money because they don't have the sponsors or the exposure to justify the means. If I'm a big organization, I have a lot more appeal. A big company comes and signs with us, gives us a bunch of money. We use that money to allocate towards different things. MetaPower isn't at that size yet. They don't have the appeal yet. So tournament winnings is the way they make back. A lot of that stuff happens, and he's like, hey, I understand this. A lot of it feels like a scam, and it is the way that it is. When things iron out, I'll make an offer if I decide if I still want the team that doesn't understand that sometimes life happens. That is not a good way to say that. If someone told me that, I'd be fuming. And I quote, I'll make an offer if I decide I still want a team that doesn't understand that sometimes life happens and things that can't be foreseen and sometimes delays happen, unquote. You're going to insult me to my face even though you owe me money? Again, as an owner, you need to keep your cool. That type of conversation is where I draw the line, and it's like I want to be supportive, and I do understand that things happen, but the way you carry yourself and present yourself, that tells a lot about a person. And again, I've never met this person. I'm making assumptions, which is not fair technically to them, but these types of things are the way you're carrying yourself behind closed doors with one of your own players and coaches. He then says, well, best of luck to you and the team going forward. When I have more information, I'll consider this roster moving forward, but now I have other things to consider. Let's see how GG do today as well. Maybe APC is a lost cause with the egos and the skill level. Addendums were sent. Doubling down on it, it appears. They don't feel like it's a scam. They just feel annoyed that they haven't gotten paid. Rightfully so. If it's been 4.5 months, I'd also want to be paid. It's nothing personal or aimed towards the org. It's just an annoyance that it's happened. These guys are trying to obviously earn a living. They're trying to pay for things so they can compete, and they can't. I've been told them that with new orgs, they don't have backup funds and stuff reserved yet, meaning that while yes, it's an org, it's been funded basically only by you. So if something happens with your funds, then the org has none. And they know that once they're sponsors, it won't matter if stuff like this were to happen again. There will be multiple sources that can provide the money or whatever. So they know that this was just a really unfortunate one-time thing, which is, again, where I give credit to Trill. Despite the way this has been presented by Lunchbox, he's still trying to be like, hey, man, like, we understand. The guys are just worried. We're trying to console them. They understand that there's a hiccup, and they don't necessarily are like super against the concept with MetaPower. It's just they're losing faith, and we need you to help out with that. And he's just like, screw you guys, is how it feels from what I'm reading. And again, it's text, it can be misconstrued, but that's how it feels. So that all goes down, and that's how that all starts with the conversation, which is what it is. But Trill talks and basically gives an end up, and he's like, hey, typically for the excuses, I pass it on to the team and be understanding, but his wording towards us and stuff is just, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. So not only is he listening now what I have to say, and his faults tries to put guilt on me and the rest of the team, which is, again, where I get frustrated. Is like, your guys trying to come to you and be realistic with the way that he's presenting himself. These are my frustrations. Please fix it. And he's just like, oh, you guys just don't understand that these things happen. It's like, that's not how you do this. He then summarizes it, basically talks about it. Hey, good nature of this and that, frustrating things. Eventually, MetaPower puts up their own statement. From everybody that I have talked to with MetaPower, the crazy thing is it feels like there's MetaPower staff, and then there's Lunchbox. Most of their staff had no idea this was going on. Most of their staff was unaware of all this kind of things that are happening behind the scenes. Most of their staff jumped shipped immediately. I talked to many of them at the event. I was at the March to the Match stuff with V1 at the beginning, and so many of them were like, I'm just trying to look out for the players. I'm trying to do everything I can to make sure these guys are taken care of. I'm trying to do what I can, but I had no idea about any of this kind of stuff. And it's really unfortunate because it seems like there's a lot of good people there that are trying to do their best for the people involved. But sometimes all it takes is one bad egg, and it ruins everything good that's being built by the people that are working hard to make it happen. And it sucks. So Lunchbox does put out his own statement talking about it's a very dramatic day and a bunch of different things, and provides his own perspective on that. I will leave all that stuff in the description down below. But this is kind of the too little too late, it feels like. To kind of wrap up this video, no matter how much Lunchbox or Jeff may have had these things actually happen, which again, it sounds like some of them were. Like, again, when you're trying to send certain documents and all of a sudden the last name is wrong, things don't go through, like everything has to be perfect. Sometimes that stuff does happen. But what doesn't get excused is the way that you carry yourself in those situations, with blaming the players, talking about how like these people are, you know, unbeknown to the fact that mistakes happen and like this and that. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I see this and you've basically, before you even got started, tainted your, like, people have got a tainted opinion on you. Like, again, you don't, in this people talk, like, welcome to the internet, man. Like, this is the type of conversation where like you got to be careful on how this stuff happens, and this is going to taint, no matter how good your intentions were, like from both organization side, player, coach, management side. Like, there's a lot of things that could have been done better. So many different things that could have been done better. And it just feels like, and I've talked about in the big picture, the thing that I want to get to when it comes to franchising or some of the things that may happen in the future. These are young kids, 15, 16, 17 is the starting age, that are signing legally binding contracts as workers, and they are unfamiliar and have not gotten the experience on how this stuff actually works. And I hope that they take the time to go and do their due diligence, hire right people, ask for help and advice, do whatever they can to make sure that they're protected, so if this stuff does happen, they're okay. And for org owners, there's a lot of people out there that think running an esport org is really awesome, but I can tell you right now, it's expensive, more than you'll ever think. Take your initial investment in your head, think about how much it runs an esport org, times that by 10, and that's on a good day. It's so expensive to run an organization, and most of them lose money and then die. Most like DC tier organizations will start up, they'll get a team that shows some success, and then a bigger org buys them out, and that's how they make their money. Happens all the time. I mean, shoot, look at Rogue. Rogue's a pretty notable brand, and they've just become a player content farm. We're bringing First Killer. First Killer plays for us, he pops off, we sell him to the highest bidder, make a bunch of money. And like, it's just gonna keep, I mean, you guys talk, yeah, 100%, Joey. You just saw me talk about Semper. In Semper's first year, they lost $1.46 million. It is not easy to do. There's a reason why some of the top dogs still stay the top dogs. People that have been around since the 2000s, like Evil Geniuses and stuff. That's why I commend version 1 with what they're doing. But they're also got the backing of an NFL organization. Again, it is not an easy thing to do. So again, people are human. They make mistakes. But again, take care of yourself. Make sure that you are looking out. You know, be skeptical. Ask questions. Do whatever you can to make sure that you're taken care of. Because again, in this industry, it is scary. And sometimes just being a good person, keeping your head down and working hard is all it takes. Shout outs to Fireworks of Luminosity. I love you. That's how he got his start in this industry, and he's still crushing it. So that's going to do it for the meta power stuff. It's there's a whole lot more. There's a bunch of details. I'll have links to all the like twit longers and all the specifics on it, but we didn't need to go into the nitty gritty and the specifics of things. More so just using this as a way to educate you about the things and the stuff that can happen to these players, coaches, staff. It goes across the board, both on the ownership side and the staff side of meta power, as well as the player, coach, you know, people trying to get involved into it side. So with that, questions, comments, concerns down below. There's a bunch of details. Again, check the description for all the links in the descriptions. Make your own opinions. Again, this is just one perspective on it. This is just one perspective on it. Again, I'm going to educate you guys. Critical thinking. Take the information you heard, go and do your own research, formulate your own opinion, and be respectful at the end of the day. So don't go on any witch hunts. Don't go attacking these people. Don't be anybody mean about that kind of stuff. But that's going to do it for today's video. If you guys enjoy this type of content, like, subscribe, notifications. You guys know how it goes. And more coming at you soon. Peace.